Start up our system.
And I'll wait one more minute. We'll start. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Ames as we are in our second century of service. If able and would like to, I would invite you all to stand for our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we'll remain standing and take a moment to recognize those in need. We have found that Vince Hasselbrock is been moved to assisted living, so keep Vince and his family in your thoughts and prayers. And also, let's continue to think of those that don't have the well-being that we all have. This is Hygiene and Sanitation Month for Rotary, and we're obviously very involved in Tanzania. And let's just think of those that are in need of better health and better living conditions as well. Thank you. If not seated, you may do so now. Well, March 13th, 2023, this is the month of our birthday, March 1st of 1921. So we've now entered into our 22nd year of service in the Ames community. Today, we're all things Iowa. So we'll have an exciting day, and we'll take a moment. I'm not sure we have any guests that have gotten online other than our special speaker. Is Louis online with us?
Might be John Christie.
Yeah, I was going to take for Louis.
Okay.
Fine.
Sorry about that, John.
That's fine.
I muffed the introduction.
Hey, that's fine. Hey, and welcome to our guest speaker. Welcome to you from Ames Rotary, Naveda, London, or Gay Paris, from far off lands or the USA. We're glad that you are here today. Come back again whenever you're near. Join us and then we'll make it clear. Around the world you will always be. Welcome at Rotary.
Thank you. Much appreciated, John, as always. And again, let's give a shout out to John and Louie and all the work that they do to help prepare us for these welcoming moments. And if we could ask for any volunteers, that would be awesome to stand alongside them. Well, all things Iowa today, some crazy NCAA March Madness. Ready for a little competition? Get your brackets ready. We have the men and women all participating in the brackets, as well as Drake University. So Iowa, Iowa State, and Drake are all participating this year. Karen sent out an email earlier. The idea is that if you would be willing to participate, $10 a bracket, half of that will go to proceeds, and we'll put that into a brag bucket purpose because the winner's going to get some bragging rights. And I'm not going to read the slide to you. You can see what it shares. And through the online that Karen sent gives you the way to go in and put it in a bracket. I put one in already this morning. I'll have to probably put in another because I'm not sure I like the picks I made. Per the rules, if there is a tie for first place, we will have a tiebreaker based on the score of the championship game. Fun between, I hope, the club members, and we do invite you to participate in both the men's and women's brackets. So let's get participating. The time will be cut off, tip off before the games on Thursday for the men, and I think it's Friday for the women at 11 o'clock. So go in, get signed up, and we'll look forward. And if you need some assistance, give a shout out and we'll try to guide you through all of that. To give you an idea, the women brackets, Drake is a number 12 seed. They're playing in Austin, Texas. Iowa State is a 5 seed playing in Knoxville, Tennessee. I almost said Knoxville, Iowa. And the women of Iowa get to play in Iowa City as a number 2 seed. The men for Iowa is a 6 seed. They're a play-in game. They're playing in Greensboro, North Carolina. Iowa is playing in Birmingham, Alabama against Auburn. And Drake is also a 12 seed playing Miami of Florida in Albany, New York. So we're loading everybody except for Iowa City to the East Coast. So it's going to be quite something. I don't have any more boring stuff to share other than today is National Good Samaritan Day. So as all good Rotarians, keep in mind service above self. With that, Mason, it is my privilege to share with you the opportunity to invite our special speaker today.
Yeah, excellent. Just a note for those online today, if you can, when you do put in those brackets, try to change the bracket name so we know who it is. Otherwise, it'll just be a bunch of random characters, and we're not really sure exactly who that bracket belongs to. So if you need some help, again, reach out. But without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our special guest speaker today. Dr. T. Waldmann Williams is the owner of TWW Consulting, serving organizational leaders, individuals, and boards to optimize their strategic intent and successfully realize and advance their strategies. And as a matter of fact, she's helped our own club with that. After a successful career with AT&T, she established her business in 1998, building upon her experiences, education, and training, and models she designed and continues to use for over 50 years. T holds several master's certifications and an undergrad in music education from the College of St. Mary in Omaha, a master's in business from University of Nebraska, and doctorate in business and education from Union Institute and University with express focus on competency management, strategic planning and management, and organizational effectiveness. In addition to her business, she serves on community and state boards and continues to research and write. And her presentation today is focused on her first book, My Name is Dixie, Designer of the Iowa Flag. T lives in Knoxville, Iowa with her husband, Merrill Williams, and is blessed with 2 stepchildren, 3 grandsons, and 1 great-granddaughter. Dr. T. Waldmann Williams, the floor is yours.
Please unmute.
T, you need to unmute. You're muted.
Got you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. I don't know what happened here, but anyway, I'm going to go back. Sorry to do this to you. There we go. Anyway, thank you very much. You think you have everything ready, and sometimes you find out you're on mute, and then it goes to the last slide. So I'm going to talk about Dixie Gebhardt. How many of you have heard of her? Anybody have heard of her? Okay. Well, she is the designer of the Iowa flag. She is from Knoxville, Iowa, and that is where I live now. I've lived here since 2008. But as any of you, would you know exactly how you would be described by friends, families, and even those who don't like you, which I can't imagine? How would you be described? I want you to think about that. How would they write about you in history? When I came about thinking about writing this book, I wanted to gear it toward 5th to 7th graders. And the reason for that is that they're coming of age of understanding who they are. I wrote it in Dixie's voice, and she asks a lot of questions. She asks about their ancestry. She asks, what do you want to be when you grow up? And many of us have changed what we wanted to do when we were back in the 5th grade. So this is Dixie's voice, and it's her voice all the way through in the book. I've had a lot of adults come back and say, I didn't know a lot about this. So they found it very interesting. So let's describe Dixie. Dixie is described, excuse me, I'm trying to get my thing, as a caregiver, educator, historian. She advocated for women. She was a suffragist. She's a leader, a genealogist, a gardener, strategist, patent holder, scrapbook artist, poet, writer, and volunteer. But if you look back at her whole life, she is spiritual. In her scrapbooks that she has at the museum in both Marion County and at the state, you can see a spirituality. She refers back to the Bible. She's an implementer. She has a lot of perseverance and resiliency. Very family oriented, no children of her own, but she was married. But what I found is something that I'm trying to do my whole life. I'm trying to be tactful, kind, gracious. And so I strive for that. But one thing I learned is that she was undetoured. Nothing got in her way to make sure everything got done. So we're going to talk about this and think about yourself as we go through. I'll talk about her ancestry, a short version of the Iowa flag, my publishing journey, illustrations, some ahas that I got out of it, some challenges. And one thing she always wanted to do was to keep history straight. And it was difficult for me to do that because what people hear, what they remember and share with you could be a lot of myths. So I want you to think about that as we go through. I also want to share some opportunities and things I've learned. The principles of the flag, which is in her own words. And I don't know if you'll be interested, but where did Dixie create the flag? Because that's very controversial. Okay, so her ancestry came from the United Kingdom. And they all moved to the New England states. Her father's family came over actually on the Mayflower, and her mother's family were Puritans. As you know, the history, I have to give you the history of the United States with this, so I'll be very brief. The Revolutionary War was 1775 to 1783. She found out through her genealogy that she had 7 from her father's side that actually fought and supported the war, and then 2 from her mother's side, which allowed her to become a daughter of the American Revolution, and her father to become a son of an American Revolution. Many of her sisters, her great nieces and nephews, and even her husband. Her father lived in New York, and New York did not become a state until 1788. And he was born around 1824, excuse me, and Kentucky became a state in 1792. Now, Dixie's mother was born in 1827, and her grandfather came from Ireland. So there's a mix of New England, and Ireland in Dixie's family. I want to take you back now into the how did Iowa come about? And it was actually purchased through the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. And this whole white area is the area of the purchase for $15 million, 828,000 acres. And so you can see that Iowa was, the Black Hawk Treaty actually became very important because it also ceded some of the Iowa territory to Iowa. And then Iowa became organized as a territory in 1838. But it wasn't until 1946 that the President Polk actually signed off that Iowa could become the state. And then in 1850, her mother and father and brother came to live in Iowa. He was a doctor. She was also educated. And in fact, her father taught her mother when she was in high school. That's how he made his money to go to become a doctor. The Civil War started in 1861, and you're probably thinking, why do I need to know all of this? Well, it's all about the flag. It's all about the history. And for you recall, Dixie is about the history. And her father was a surgeon in the Civil War. And it was Governor Stone, who also was from Knoxville, Iowa, who named him to be a brigade surgeon. And so he was there throughout the war. And then Dixie was born November 18th, 1866. I'm getting a lot of my 19s, 20s, and 18s and hundreds mixed up. So if I do, believe what's written. She graduated from Knoxville High School in 1885, was a teacher for 2 years. She then quit teaching because her brother died. She already had another brother who died, and her mother became very melancholy and sad. So Dixie came home to live with them and to be caring for them, because all of her other brothers and sisters were out of the house, married, and in professions. She joined PEO, which actually was started in Iowa, down in Mount Pleasant. And she joined that in 1887, actually going through and become a recording secretary for the International, which you know is in Des Moines, Iowa, the PEO building. And she was the recording secretary for them. She also was president of the chapter here. In 1890, that's when the Daughters of American Revolution started. And actually, that was their second house that the Cornells built on that same property. And they downsized. Many of your folks have been downsizing. You may have downsized your house, and that's important to understand in this whole realm of things. She joined the Daughters of American Revolution in 1897, joined a chapter in Des Moines. So think about it. How did she get to Des Moines? There started being a train, but a lot of it was by stagecoach or by a carriage ride or by train. And so if you went into Des Moines to go to the meeting, it took you a couple, 2 to 3 hours to get there. So think about that as we move through all of this. In 1900, she did get married in June, but think about this. Her mother died in March. She got married in June. Her sister died in September. Her nephews started living with them. And it was in the house that her mother was buried from. It was in the house that her sister was buried from. So a lot of things in that house were happening that were sad. She divorced in 1904, and you think that she was only with him for a couple of months because her husband was a traveling salesman. He went down to Texas, decided to stay there. She didn't want to go. So it took her until 1904 to divorce him. Interesting fact is that in her license, in her marriage license, she was not named Dixie, but she was Christian Dixie Mae Cornell, but she signed it Dickie Gebhardt, Cornell Gebhardt. So she divorced in 1904. From 1911 to 1917, the Daughters of American Revolution said they wanted to have a flag, and understand that she lived in the house and owned the house in 1911 to 1922. Her father died in 1912. So again, a lot of sorrow in that house. From 1918 to 1946, she was a suffragist. She was active in the Democratic Party. She ran for county recorder. She lost. She tried and campaigned to become the postmaster here in Knoxville because she said she needed a job. think about this. After all the work that she did on the flag, she needed a job to feel some worth. You wouldn't think about it, but I believe she was very melancholy. And so she needed to have a focus, a refocus of something in her life. She didn't get the postmaster job, but she did have a house of her own that she built, and that became her steadfast. Very family, again, very a gardener, really talking about her work as a gardener. She also worked for the VA hospital here as a volunteer, so she was very active in the community. She died at the Collins Hospital here in Knoxville in 1955, where she actually lived for 18 months, because in those days it was their nursing home also, so she died there. Now that's all of her history. What I want to do is start talking about the flag now. All right. So, as you know, it was from 1861 to 1864. There were actually several flags that became Iowa. There were 138 Iowa battlefields that were regiment flags. And there are 1,000 soldiers in a regiment, so every regiment had their own flag. But the first colored regiment flag was actually was made in Keokuk. And that is also, as well as many of the flags are on display and at the Iowa State Museum in Des Moines. There was also another way to get a flag, and that was if you smoked X number of cigarettes, you could get a flag. And it said Iowa, it was a star, and it was yellow. But in 1892, General Lincoln's, James Lincoln designed a flag because they wanted a specific flag for the World's Fair. There were only 2 made, and they're both lost. Okay, so let's look at the whole time frame of Dixie. She joined in 1897. She organized a chapter here in 1911. Each state region of the ISDR from 1911 to 1917, and those are in Dixie's own words, actually they wanted a flag. And Dixie became the recording secretary of ISDR. And when she went to their Continental Congress, this is what she saw. She saw that all of these flags were up there, but 3. And even though they were states, there were 3 that did not have flags. One was Iowa, which is right there. One was Arizona, and one was Oregon. Now, I want you to take a close look at all of these flags. Many of them look the same. It's hard to tell one from another. And she kept saying, well, what should Iowa's flag be? When they came back from that Continental Congress, what I'm going to share with you is this whole timeline of the flag. So let's look at this. The ISDA journey started in 1911 and ended in 1921, but the full flag making ended in 1917. Dixie became a recording secretary in 1913. When she and Mrs. Howell came back from that Continental Congress, they went to talk to Edgar Harlan, who is the curator of the State Historical Museum Society. And he was actually very important in all of Iowa of keeping the history straight. And so they went to him and said, we're interested in 2 things. We're interested in marking the Mormon Trail because that helped get a lot of settlers into Iowa. And we're interested in getting a flag in Iowa. And he said, well, ladies, I'll tell you what, I'll pay half for the Mormon Trail markers, and I'll see how the legislative group is favorable to a flag. And he came back and told them, oh, they're very favorable. But unbeknownst to him, he also went to Senator Larrabee and said, hey, why don't we start a flag commission? So the General Assembly in 1913 put together a commission and said, for $500, we'll start a contest for an Iowa flag. They had it in a few newspapers, but what they found out is that he did not go back and tell them, hey, we've got this started. And so they were waiting for him to come back and tell them something that not only was it favorable, but we also got this started. He never told them anything. And they went back in 1915 and he says, hey, we can't get anybody interested in a contest. We're probably going to need $1,000 for this. And so they get granted another $1,000. Between 1913 and 1921, there were 3 governors. There was a new governor in about 1917, and the governor and the curator and the adjunct general were all the ones on the commission. So understand there was absolutely no action taken. It wasn't even spread around. They didn't even tell the ISDAR that there was a commission on for the flag contest, etc. Dixie became appointed as state regent and then was elected in 1916. What she did, because all they ever did was to say, we want a flag, we want a flag, we want a flag. She was tired of listening to it. She wanted action. So she got 2 of the past regents she started strategizing. How will I get this into action? So she asked 2 of the past regents to come up with their legislative agendas. They came back and said, we want a flag. We want this to go to the Iowa legislation in 1917. And this was at their 1916 convention. So from October 1916 to April 1917, they held a contest. They put it out through all of the Daughters of American Revolution. They also sent it to the Sons of the American Revolution, and they wanted a flag too. So Dixie was excited. She had been working on a design and she put it in. She was waiting to hear what was going to happen, and they came back to her in March 1917 and said, Dixie, the design is yours. The other person's design was actually from Iowa City, and it looked like all of the rest. It had a blue background, it showed the state seal, and it didn't sell anything. So as you know, Dixie had all this history. She had all of this purpose to make an Iowa flag, and her design won. So the next day, the flag Mrs. Prentice from Iowa City went to the Harlan and said, guess what? We have a design. And he said, well, that's fine, but you have no right to have a design. And it's really the commission that has to make this flag correct. And she said, what? There's a commission? And she was so angry. And the Sons of the American Revolution and the Daughters, she came back and said, who knew there was a commission going on? I can't believe it. And then in April of 1917, actually, Harlan went back with a report and said, nothing's happened with our Iowa Flag Commission. We have no action. We aren't prepared to come up with a design. So we think you ought to disband the commission, dissolve the commission, and start another one. And that was in April 1917. So what do you think the legislation did? Absolutely nothing. However, during this time, also coming up was Iowa was Governor Harding sent National Guards to protect the border because there was Pancho Villas who was coming in to raid New Mexico and Texas. So he wanted to defend the border. Also in 1917, in April 6th, we went to war with Germany in World War I. All of the troops everywhere were still in regiments. Regiments had flags. There were no flags. So at that time, Harding heard, well, we need to have a flag. And they said, we have no flag. In May 11th, 1917, when the council met, it was decided that the Sons of American Revolution and the Daughters of American Revolution were going to go to that meeting and say, we have a design. And we think you ought to approve this as the flag. So they went to that meeting. If you look at the minutes, it was passed and seconded in no time flat. There was no discussion. It went out all over the country that Iowa now has a flag, and it was called a regimental flag, not the flag, because only the state legislature can, and then the governor sign off to make it an official flag. So here Dixie got, they got the flag in. Next, I'm going to share some other things with you. While I've already talked about the flag, let me talk about how the flag got produced. Because again, the sons and the daughters both said, we'll pay for this flag. We'll move it along. We'll get it paid and get each of the regiments done. So here was what it looked like when she just quickly drew it and showed it to them. They liked it. However, it didn't have the red and blue on it, even though in her original design, which is at the museum, and she colored it, it had the red and blue stripes. They paid a lot of money to get this done. They collected monies from all over the place. They went to a flag maker called Myers. Myers said, we will have this done and able to get to you for the flag, to get it to the troops. However, Dixie had to write a letter to them and said, you promised this to us. You said it was going to be on Wells Fargo. It wasn't there. If you don't get us in time, we're just going to tell you to forget it. Because they were really working hard to get the flag there. So sure enough, she wrote on September 21st, 1970, and said, the troops have gone. You're too late. We don't want any of them. Thank you very much. We're sending them all back. So here's a lot of frustration building up, talking to the various generals of the various regiments and trying to get them at least 10 flags. And then they went to another flag company in New York, the Annan Flag Company. She had to redo and show what the design was, and this was the design, and she says this is correct in every detail. Now, making the whole flag, by the way, she did get it to all of the troops, but it was also at that time that the military said, we're not going to have regiments have their own flags. So they quit having the regimental flags at this time, even though it got and flew over in France, and it flew down at the border. It was no longer a regimental flag because they stopped all regimental flags. So now it's on to become a state flag. However, she had to neutralize a lot of people. She had to neutralize even people in her own organization, because they didn't want to have a Republican governor come and talk at their meeting. And she says, it doesn't matter if they're Republican or Democrat. We are not political. She has also had to overcome this, the GAR, the Grand Army of the Republic, because they believed that it was due to the flag, to state flags, that the Civil War started. A lot of the states down in the South kept their state flag higher than the United States flag. They knew that. So the GAR, at least up in Iowa, and many of them across the United States, said, we don't want state flags. The problem is there is one flag, and that actually started the Civil War. However, you all know that there are many reasons that the Civil War started. And if you talk to historians, you'll get several different answers. So the GAR did not want a flag. Then she also had a problem with her patent. She actually officiated it, moved it officially to the patent office in 1917. But it wasn't until March 9th, 1921 that it was approved, actually March 8th. And it was simply because they kept saying, well, this isn't an original design. Iowa is not original. So the lawyers, and she had to go through and say how this is, the whole thing about Iowa, how the design itself, the whole design. Well, the seal is part of Iowa. Well, again, it's the design. So it took her that long. So many frustrations during this time. I'm going to share with you my journey now. I moved to Iowa in 2008. In 2012, the city decided to buy the cottage, as it was called, the Dixie Gebhardt house, as part of the library expansion. I didn't really know about Dixie until that time. And then it was in 2015 that I really started doing a study from an organization that I belong, and found out more about the Iowa flag. In 2016, I wrote my first book, the first book or version, And I got my first and second illustrators. In 2017, I got my second version and third illustrator. And that was the second time Dixie was nominated for the Iowa Hall of Fame, but didn't pass. In 2019, I had my third version of the book and fourth illustrator. By the way, it's difficult when you work with children and people in high school because they're always very busy. And then my fourth illustrator woman said, yes, I have all these great ideas, but look how long it took from 2016 to 2019 to find out nothing was happening. Kind of sounds like Dixie, doesn't it? I put in the third nomination for her for the Hall of Fame, but again, she was denied it. Then in 2020, I had my fourth version and the fifth illustrator, and that's who I stayed with. 2021 was the Iowa flag, the fourth nomination for Dixie, and it was denied. And then in 2021, I got the book done, and it was the first signing was at the March 29th, which is the official Iowa Flag Day. So let's look at challenges. Mine were COVID, because I found out through all of this that there were myths out there. People were telling me wrong. There were things I saw on the internet and other places that were just wrong. So let me show you. I finally went back to the State Museum, couldn't get in except for an hour and a half at a time for a year and a half. And it was 2 times a day. So Knoxville to Des Moines, granted, it was only 40 miles for me. It didn't take me all that long. But again, it was a travel. But look at all these different ways of writing. I had to interpret those. I had to really look down and say, what are they trying to say? The worst one is this one, and it was just difficult. So anyway, just know that that was a challenge. I read over, I would say, 5,000 pages of things. I looked over about 40 books to try and get down to the nutshell. And I found that the best is, of course, the original source. Dixie name, it was said in the dictionary that her name was Jim Dick. Her father had 3 horses, but that's not true. One of them was Jim Dick Cornell. Another one was, they said, was named after the horses. The girls were named after all the horses, but actually it was the other way around. She was actually born Dixie Mae Cornell. Why was the flag held? Well, we know that it started way back in 1911 with the ISDAR and even 1913 with the state legislature. But if you look at the internet books and newspapers, and even the Library of Congress has it wrong. So you have to go back to the original sources to find out. And this is where I found in the volume 2 Iowa State flag that it actually started back in 1911. So those were just challenges that I had to come up with. Some opportunities. I learned about Lawrence and Grace Jones. Lawrence Jones actually was the first Black graduated from Marshalltown. And he's the one who started Piney Woods, which was one of the first industrial education for Blacks or for anybody. It was kind of an offshoot of the Tuskegee Institute. But after the Civil War, a lot of people were out of jobs. A lot of Blacks were out of jobs. So he said, if you have a job and if you have skills, you'll always get a job. So he started this whole industrial education that is now in a lot of schools. His wife, who was from Burlington, Grace, she was the first Black graduated from the Burlington High School. She had started an institute itself that was connected to Tuskegee Institute that was all around industrial education. So as far as I'm concerned, Iowa has a lot of background in industrial education because of Lawrence and Grace Jones. Other things that we've gotten from this, the gifts of DAR and PEO, not only to history, but to women and to understanding your ancestries and your background and what they give to advance the women in education and business. What I also got from all of these letters were the graciousness and tactfulness of them. I mean, I would have been ticked off had I gone to Edgar and Harlan. He never came back to me to tell me that there is a flag commission. She was very tactful. Leo Landis, who is at the Iowa State Historical Museum, was incredible. This is a man who is a genius in himself, and he is a curator. I can't tell you what a wonderful find that Iowa Museum is, and the whole Iowa Historical Society. If you ever get there, please do. It is a wonderful site. Learning about and using resources. Leo was the one who really kept saying, it wasn't Governor Harding. Go back and speak the truth about 1911, which is why I keep emphasizing it. And this whole thing about myths and keeping history straight. How many of us speak myths a lot because we heard it through rumors or we got it wrong in our ears? So it's really important, because if you go back to the four-way test, first, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Think about those two questions. And that goes back to this, keeping history straight. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? That really helped me understand, and I have it in the book, that the four-way test is important to understand for fifth graders to seventh graders and all the way up, because it is part of keeping history straight. So the illustrations, I want to share with you some of the illustrations by Cindy Gordon is a professional artist, and she takes pictures and makes them into a portrait that looks like a picture itself. So up above were the three sisters, and she wanted to keep that whole horse thing in the background, but it was in the background and not the foreground. So she talks about the sisters, besides Dixie, Jackie and Bella. And actually those were the names of the horses. Dixie, this is Dixie through the ages, age 8, about age graduation, about age 19, in her 20s, and then in her 30s. And so I show you this because this is a picture. The first one is of the picture of Dixie with her flag. And this was actually taken shortly after the flag became official. And so what she did was to take that picture and to draw this. And it's incredible how much they look alike. And she really got down. And this is what the chair looked like with all of this integral wood there. So I'm very, very proud of her and so happy. And I am so blessed to get to have worked with her, and still am. We're doing other books. Let's look at the flag itself. Dixie said she wanted to remember history, if you remember. So she took the first flag that flew over Iowa, and that was the French flag. And the French flag, every one of them is equal, the red, white, and the blue. And if you remember down in Louisiana, and not Louisiana, but in Missouri, they also had the French flag as their state flag, and everything was the same. But she said she wanted to connect French with the indigenous tribes and with everything else. So let's look at with everything else. That doesn't make any sense. So let's look at the United States flags. In 1777, there were 13 stripes, 13 stars. In 1795, 15 stars and 15 stripes. Finally, in 1818, there were 20 stars, and it was the first time they went back to the 13 stars and stripes, and they said, that's what we're sticking with. So in 1819, 21, and then 25, 26, 27, 28. Finally, in 1846, December 28th, Iowa became the 29th state. So the flag was from 1847 to 1846. And actually, you could have different types of flags. They had it in the round with the star in the middle, and that actually flew over the state. So this was one of them that I just went with because it matched all the others. Now let's go to the Iowa flag. Again, it was designed, and in the initial design, and Dixie thinking of it from 1911 to 1917. In some places, and I couldn't go back to the original source, they said 1909 she started thinking about it. I can't tell, so I stick with 1911. She started getting involved as a recording secretary for the state, and then she became the regent for the state in 1916. She also worked in Washington, D.C. as the genealogist. She won it in March 1917, and then the Defense Council okayed it in May 11th, and then it became official on May 29th. So here, I'm just going to share with you a bit of the background. So what she wanted to do was the design to be simple and to recognize its symbolism and know it meant Iowa. So if you look at this flag, even though I can't have you all talk and everything, I want you to see, gosh, what in the national does it look like? Okay, it looks like there's some stripes, but there's only 3. It has the colors of the flag. It also has the eagle. Well, she also wanted to connect it to Iowa. So the Indians that were indigenous tribes, and where we got in 1832, some of the cessation of the land back to Iowa was from the Sioux and the Fox, and they were the tribes who were here. And so she went back to them. And the red signifies courage, zeal, and fervency. The blue signifies loyalty, devotion, friendship, and truth. There we go back to the truth. And the white signifies purity, clean living, and rectitude in conduct. So keep your conduct pure, kind of like the 4-way test. In symmetry, she wanted the white to be double the size of either the red or the blue, because she wanted to show the unwritten past and the unwritten future. And so she wanted to make sure that the white was bigger than the red and the blue. And of course, it shows the French flag too, the colors. She wanted to have our state seal and our motto, which is our liberties we prize and our rights we will maintain. The only difference between the motto and Dixie's is that there is not a comma after our. She also wanted to make sure that it showed Iowa and that it was clear that this was the Iowa flag. So she, in bold letters and in red, she had Iowa made. And the reason for that is that she knew that Iowa meant beautiful land. Iowa was named after the Iowa tribe, and that she had learned that the red signified courage, and it was a beautiful color to the American Indians. So this demonstrated courage to live in Iowa. So the reason I'm showing this is because after they bought the house, and this is the second house where Dixie lived. Oh, I won't say the second house where she lived, because she lived many places. The city now wants to destroy it because the library and the city that purchased it during the library expansion want it demolished so that they can put in a park. Granted, it's not part of the historical because it grew in different lengths, but several of us went to suggest several things like, why don't we take out the additions? Let's use it for something else. But this is where they are now insofar as the house is concerned. There are other things here for Dixie. For instance, she has been, the flag has been on three stamps. There are several memorials here. We have a memorial in the courthouse that has her picture, but still, this is the only house in all of Iowa where it's believed that the Iowa flag was designed. People will say it wasn't designed there, but in your own experience, do you only think I only designed something here or I only did it here? I think about my own business. Actually, I thought about my business for many years before in 1998, I created it and instituted it. Did I only institute it in New Jersey? No, actually, it came from many places, but it started in New Jersey. And so if you think about where do you actually design something, even asking sixth graders, they said, well, you start at many different times. Okay, my time is almost up. So I just want to say thank you. And I just will ask, do you have any questions? And now I think I should probably stop sharing and let you all talk. And I've done a lot of talking, so, but thanks. I love this story. All right, any questions?
As Mason had indicated, if people do have questions, they can put them in the chat.
Oh, in the chat.
And at this point, we don't have any Dixie, or Dixie. T, I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
I'm so engrossed with the story.
Did you like this story? Did it make sense? Did you know about any of it? What did you learn that was interesting? That was an aha for you?
For me, all of it was an aha. I knew nothing about it.
Okay. Anybody else? You think it was interesting? Is it important for kids to learn? Say more about the schools. Okay, thank you. Piney Woods. Piney Woods is still going today. It was free. It actually started out in the woods, and he actually was able to get money from a lot of people that owned slaves. But because he was such a person who could describe how that school was going to be, they gave him a lot of money and donated land to him. It's still going. By the way, we had a lot of teachers who went there who believed in what he was trying to do. And many of them worked there for nothing. There we had several teachers actually from Iowa. There is a building there that is called the Iowa Building because there were a lot of people within Iowa who believed in what they were trying to do. And Dixie herself was a trustee. Unfortunately, many of the records were burned, so they couldn't even tell me for sure when she did that, but I went back to his books and it said she was a prominent DAR, and she was mentioned in that book, as were several other DAR people. It's still going today. It's primarily Black, but they have a lot of other Indians and other indigenous tribes who go to school there. If you're in the state, it's about $12,500 to attend, and out of state, it's $22,500, and most of it is by scholarships. It is very Christian oriented because he believed that he grounded in all of that. So school is still going today. Any other questions?
And where is Piney Woods?
Oh, thank you. It's in Missouri. There are a lot of Piney Woods, actually. There's a Piney Woods down in Texas, another one in North Carolina, another one in Georgia. But the Piney Woods school that I'm talking about is in Missouri. Sorry. Thank you very much for asking that. Other questions? There's another one. Let me see. I have to get this. Great story. When my mom died, I discovered, oh, a 39-star American flag on a desk. It represented North Dakota's expected statehood. But what I learned that U.S. flags only added 4 stars for new states on July 4th. And yes, that's interesting. I didn't know that. I hope that you can give that flag to, like what do you call those? A political party or to somebody else? Because to have those flags, I think is truly exciting. I did buy one that had the 29 stars on it myself. Other questions?
Yep.
So the important thing I would like to have you take away from this is, one, share this story. Share this story with your children and grandchildren. Share the story about your own family with your children and grandchildren. Write down your own history. I really like it when hospice, when I was I was a president of a hospice organization and a volunteer organization. And we had somebody who actually recorded the histories, asking people who were in hospice about their history. And then we put it into discs, and we actually gave that to the family after the individual died. Think about what gifts you can give to your own children, grandchildren, your city, by sharing the history. A lot of it is not taught in our schools today. It's really a shame. Hey, buy the book and give it to your library and give it to your schools. We had somebody who did that. If I can come and talk, I would be glad to do that. I did sell some books at your festival in Ames. No, nobody bought the book, but they were interested. So that was kind of fun. Anything else I can share with you today? All right, there's one more question, just a minute. Oh, thank you. That was very kind. Thank you. So again, live up to your 4-way test. Keep history straight. Is it the truth? This is very important. Is it fair to all concerned? I can look back and say these folks were not fair, but you know what? I did not live in their shoes. I can only say from what the facts are, and I share those facts. So please keep it straight. Share it with your history with others, particularly your family. And again, I thank you so very much for your time today.
We thank you for your time, the most valuable commodity we actually have. So thank you for sharing this history and the time you have invested in bringing Dixie's story to life.
Thank you.
I have found the flag inspires our identity, and it symbolizes our pride in all things that are great about the state of Iowa. And Dixie really put that together, and T, you put that together.
Thanks.
With that, let's conclude with the 4-way test. So those that are able or willing, please stand, and we'll get ready here. Of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you. Meeting adjourned.